What it is, what it do, and what's poppin', peoples. You're now tapped into Adulture, the art of growing up. And I'm your host, the Royal Topic, and today we got a combo of convo, so let's stroll and convo. Today's title, The Effects of No Father Figures.
There really isn't much of a relationship with my father. As growing up as a young man, my mom was the world to me, and he was really not in the picture at all.
I can relate to homeboy just to give you guys, a little rundown on this platform. This platform is highlighting fathers. It's highlighting a lot of grown man conversation, things to make you think, things to make you grow up and realize what you need to do and what's expected as an adult. That's why it's titled Adulture. Me myself, I'm a proud father, daddy without having a daddy. Growing up, it was just me, my younger brother, and my mom. I had an older brother, but once his father stopped showing up, older brother started acting out. So we didn't see much of him. He was busy in the streets. You get me? In our environment, it wasn't all that safe, with drugs, gangs, alcohol, temptations, all that was all in the atmosphere. But with the blessings of God, I was able to navigate through all the bullshit and break that cycle. And one of the main cycle I'm proud of is not only breaking away from the streets, but breaking away from being a deadbeat dad. And my family, and I'm not just talking about my immediate family, there was a lot of men that I seen in our household, from uncles to cousins, that they was running the streets reckless. They was skiing all up in the cheeks and not taking care of the children. And I'm proud. I am a proud father to say that I'm one of the first ones to cut all that bullshit out. And I'm heavy involved in my children's life. So with all that said, to all you real dads, stand up. I salute all of y'all.
I had a great example.
Yeah.
I had a great example. He was the prototype, as far as what I feel, where he came from, because his father wasn't there like that. So, for a man that, basically raised himself and raised, his other family, his siblings, and to become the man that he was, I can't ask for anything else.
And as I've gotten older, I've kind of understood that he had some issues that probably it was a good thing that he wasn't around.
My father was murdered when I was 8 years old, but from what I remember, I was the happiest little boy in the world. You know what I mean? Until I lost my father.
Real shit, man. You're gonna learn, on this platform where we have these deep conversations. When it comes to fathers in our community, there's 10 types of dads. You got the Bill Cosby dad, the one that shows unity with his kids. He's very involved with his wife. They work as a unit. They take care of their homes. They both have a career. You got the James Evans dad. He's there every day, but him and the family is going through struggling times in a struggling environment. You got the Phil Banks dad. He's rich, but he's hardly never home. You got the Hollow dad. He's home, but he ain't there. That's the one who sits on the couch and, he don't spend no time with his kids, barely his wife. You got the 316. He works, come home, drinks. He's cranky all the time and verbally abusive. You got Houdini. He's here 1 minute, gone the next. You got the now and later dad. He shows up once or twice a year. You got JJ, the jumping jack dad. He can't stand still, running the streets, has more than one family. You got Ghost Rider. He plants a seed. You heard of him, but you never see him. And then you got the lost souls, the ones who's doing 15 of life, or they're dead. Rest in peace for whatever reason.
And that's what I'm doing my best to duplicate with my children, is to make them feel the way I felt before I lost them. My father, he was everything.
He wasn't there all the time, but when he does, it made such a great impact on my life. And I realized later on why. Because for years it hurt me, because I'm just a smaller version of my father. He's about 6'4", but I look just like him. And I used to stare in the mirror, and I used to cry. and just wonder why, he won't come get me. Wonder why he didn't want to spend time with me. There was even a period of time where I blamed myself.
I was fortunate actually to have my father in my life. We still speak. I'm actually probably going to see him around Father's Day or maybe a couple of days before. My little brother's graduating from junior high school, so I'm going to go down to New Jersey to where they stay.
My father, and I can describe my dad, he was there for me. And I mean, he was there, but then sometimes when he was there, he wasn't there. And maybe because of his job or because of how tired it may have been, but sometimes he was right there, like on the couch watching TV. My mom used to get on him all the time. Take your son out, do something.
But one thing that I learned about my father was the fact that he had it really tough. And I found this out just a couple of years ago. One Christmas, we had a chance to talk. And he had it really tough because, I mean, for one, his father was murdered when I was a baby, so I never knew my grandfather.
My dad did the best he could. And like this brother was saying here, from his nature, I don't think sometimes he knew how to deal with. And I'm going to be honest, there was times where I felt uncomfortable. I never could tell my dad I loved him. I didn't know how. And I didn't figure he didn't know how. But me and my dad, we got a close. Before he passed away, I made a commitment to myself to let this man know that I loved him. And I told him that. And while he was on his deathbed, he was real sick. We got to be together. I regret nothing that man didn't do for me. I learned a lot from him. There's things that I didn't learn from him that he taught me without even knowing. And just, I have no regrets.
And, let's salute a lot of these gentlemen right here. A lot of these gentlemen on this platform, I think all of them, if I'm correct, is heavily involved in their children's lives. And they're breaking that cycle of what they went through, It kind of sucks when, sometimes we don't think about the trauma that individuals going through or went through in their lifetime and why they're acting the way they're acting. But I will say this. It is something that we got to have empathy on because, there's a reason for everything. But in my mind, I really feel if you are man enough to, stick your wood up into some cheeks and ski all up in there and have a baby, you know what time it is once you find out that woman's pregnant, if you know that woman's pregnant, and regardless of what the situation is, if you're man enough to do all that, you should be man enough to have a child. If not, you should be protecting yourself. Now, I know we got a lot of things like trauma, alcohol, drugs, abusive, neglect. We got a lot of trauma in our community that make us operate the way we operate as we grow older. But like I said, if you've grown enough to have sex and not use a condom, well, you should know better what's going to happen if that woman you're having sex with ends up having a baby. It's just, come on now, common sense. So I'm not going to say I can't excuse the trauma, but what I would say is that, come on, man, we got to be better than this. And I agree with the gentleman that just spoke before I hit pause right here. We got to express the love that we have for our children, man. We got to let them know how much we love them, how much they mean to us. A lot of children don't get that enough. They don't get the love from their family members, both moms and dads, even the ones living with them. A lot of these children are not hearing the word, I love you, baby. I love you, son. I love you, daughter. You catch me? And expressed to them how much they mean to the parent. Me personally, I feel if that is expressed a lot of children wouldn't walk out the door looking for love in all the wrong places. A lot of children wouldn't be out there, just fucking having love and wanting to get into these relationships and jumping in the bed with anybody that they fuck with. You catch me? They'll be able to sniff it a mile away and know who really got love for them out there in the streets versus who don't. So that's one thing that we need to start applying. And I'm not saying that we don't do it, but what I do know is talking to a lot of kids, even growing up in my time, a lot of us wasn't. A lot of kids aren't being told that they're loved from their own parents.
How that plays in the relationship to my daughters, I want to be the father to them that I never had.
Now, I've had that example. Now, what I'm going to do is try to tweak it. You know, it's like '09 version, '89 version of a vehicle. You know, oh yeah, it was a nice car, but you know, there was a couple things that we could have did better, worked the bugs out. So,
And we're gonna start right there. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. We need to change the table. You know, let's break the cycle and let's really start being involved. You know what I love about 2024, and it doesn't get highlighted enough. And again, this is the reason why I'm starting this platform on the Real to Real, is because there's a lot of fathers now stepping up to the plate, whether they're with the mother or not. There's a lot of fathers getting heavily involved. There's a lot of fathers taking a time out, whether they're tired, whether they're, regardless of what they're going through in this world, the world is beating the shit out of them. They're coming home. They're picking up the phones. They're getting involved in their children's life on a day-to-day basis. And that's the beautiful thing about it. And that's what we need to highlight, because we don't see a lot of it. And I'm not saying that it's not out there, because it is out there. Again, this is the reason why this platform's here, because a lot of people's not promoting it. So let's go on ahead and jump into this next video. Black Fathers Matter.
Which poses the bigger threat to the Black community? Without missing a beat, he said, the absence of Black fathers. It was President Barack Obama who said, we all know these statistics, that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison.
I'm not going to go off of statistics and data, because I don't have none of that stuff in front of me. I'm going to go off of my reality and what I witnessed growing up in the streets and in my neighborhood. And, I didn't have a father, and that led me to the streets. I didn't have no protection. I didn't have confidence in myself. There was no real leadership in the home. There was nobody to teach me how to be a man. Like I said earlier, my older brother was running the streets, reckless, doing him. So in my neighborhood, where I'm from, there's gangs fucking on every block, on every corner, there's gangs. And it was to the point where you couldn't go nowhere without bumping into a fucking street gang. As I got older, a lot of cats, I was mature for my age because I was tall and I spoke properly. And I got a little bit of slack because of it. And I had to, prove myself a few times. It wasn't a lot, but I had to prove myself a few times to let motherfuckers know what time it is, that I'm not that dude that you're going to be clowning or bullying, catch me? So with that being said, a lot of cats couldn't, they didn't like the fact that I was by myself. And if we got into a squabble, what the beef was about, that I got the upper hand, and what's fucking weird was that I didn't even know how to fight. I figured I was just born one of them dudes that don't put your fucking hands on me. Yeah. And it was just an instinct type thing. Now, I'm not going to say my hands was nice, real shit. That had to come, I had to learn all that as I grew up. But at the beginning, I didn't have no skills. What I would do was toss motherfuckers around. And the things I didn't like was that, after, me and the dude got into it, the motherfucker would run off screaming out some, yo, I'll be back. I'm coming back with my homies. I'm coming back with niggas from up such and such block. I'm coming back with my brothers and my cousins and them. You catch me? And a lot of that shit, it used to stress me out because I didn't have nobody to go back to. I didn't have nobody to hold me down if them motherfuckers did come back around on some bullshit. Now, don't get it twirled up. Some niggas did come back around and, they tried some sucker shit. And good thing was that, my older brother had a lot of respects in a lot of the hoods in the neighborhood. So a lot of cats knew me as, my older brother's little brother. And that kind of helped when they seen me, surrounded, there was cats in the neighborhood that jumped in and held me down. So, but with that being said, the point that I'm getting at was after a while, my dude, I started needing protection, because I didn't want to be that dude that was getting jumped by a bunch of dudes, and I had no homies to back me up, and I sure enough didn't want my little brother to have to get into those predicaments too. So I was looking out for my family as well. And what I end up doing is hanging out with a lot of kids from the neighborhood, my grandmother's neighborhood, and I started getting a little rep, and real shit. We were so deep that people used to consider us a gang. Later on down the line, I'm not gonna front, I ran with a couple of niggas in a couple of hoods and shit. And what I realized was that all of us had one fucking thing in common. None of us had a dad. And we're all looking for the same thing: structure, confidence, and protection. And with that being said, when these type of conversations pop open, it makes me think back to when I was growing up as a teenager and how real these conversations needs to be had, because a lot of us don't have fathers in our lives, and it was leading us to down a road of destruction. I'm gonna let this dude go on with this video here, but I just wanted to point that out, that I can't go off of data, but what I do know in my neighborhood, in my city, that was the thing, that a lot of dudes was running the street reckless because they didn't have a dad, and a lot of them end up in a lot of sticky, fucked up situations that was destroying their lives.
The Journal of Research on Adolescence confirms that even after controlling for varying levels of household income, kids in father-absent homes are more likely to end up in jail. And kids who never had a father in the house are the most likely to wind up behind bars. In 1960, 5% of America's children entered the world without a mother and father married to each other.
And all of us been in jail at least 1 or 2 times. Real shit. Even myself. Even though when I got caught up in that bullshit, I said to myself, yo, this shit is not for me. I don't ever want to fucking get locked up again. And I made sure that I did everything that I can to not put myself in the predicament to get me locked the fuck up. But every one of us been chased down by the cops, harassed by the cops, dragged down to the precinct, to the jail, whatever the case may be, had to post bail. You catch me? So again, I'm not going to say how accurate this statistics and this data is, but from my experience, it was highly high that the percentage of the dudes that I was rocking with, the motherfuckers from my city and my hood, every one of them niggas, even the chicks that was running in them streets, been locked up at least once.
By 1980, it was 18%. By 2000, it had risen to 33%, and 15 years later, the number reached 41%. For Blacks, even during slavery, when marriage for slaves was illegal, Black children were more likely than today to be raised by both their mother and father. Economist Walter Williams has written that, according to census data from 1890 to 1940, a Black child was more likely to grow up with married parents than a white child. For Blacks, out-of-wedlock births have gone from 25% in 1965 to 73% in 2015. For whites, from less than 5% to over 25%, and for Hispanics, out-of-wedlock births have risen to 53%.
The only thing I don't like with these data is that they let to shove in our face is that you got to use your common sense. You catch me? In 1965 and 1880, if I'm correct, if that's what he said, what did he say? If I'm correct, he said 1880. Let's go back.
15. For 25 on a white child.
My
For
bad.
Blacks,
1890 to 1940. You can't really compare data from back then to 2023 and 2024. You catch me? And the reason is this. The population has grown since then. Things has changed. The atmosphere is different. There's a lot more Blacks out here than it was back in 1890. You catch me? In 1940 and 1965. Those people had kids and their kids had kids, and the population is just 3 times, 4 times, 5 times bigger than when it was back then. So it's hard to compare these years percentage and compare the two to say how it was better then than it was now. It's just like when people have the conversation about who's the best athlete, Jordan or LeBron. You can't really have that conversation. Why? Because back then it was a different atmosphere. It was a different hunger. Things wasn't as given to the players as it was today. You know, there's a lot of things you put into factor that you got to realize that it's going to be hard to compare the two. Number one, that they're not in the same year bracket, but things has changed. Things has evolved. And I'm not the type of person that's going to sit here and hold this data accountable or put this data in somebody's face and say that, oh, we got to go by the data when the years are a huge gap and the population of the Black community has grown since then.
Have risen to 53%. What happened to fathers? The answer is found in a basic law of economics. If you subsidize undesirable behavior, you will get more undesirable behavior. In 1949, the nation's poverty rate was 34%. By 1965, it was cut in half to 17%, all before President Lyndon Johnson's so-called war on poverty. But after that war began in 1965, poverty began to flatline. From 1965 until now, the government has spent over $20 trillion to fight poverty.
Yeah, where's that $20 trillion being spent? Because I don't see that in none of the fucking hoods. Another thing we got to keep in factor, you know, when you go back to these datas of 1950, 1940, on the real shit, back in those days, it was actually foundational Black Americans here. There wasn't immigrants like that here. I mean, there was a lot of white immigrants, but there wasn't a lot of Black immigrants, you know, from these other countries like Africa, Jamaica, the Hispanic countries. You catch me? So the crime has risen because we have gotten a lot of people from other countries that's coming to this country that don't really give a fuck. There was a time in the 80s, if I'm correct, where a lot of motherfuckers was coming up to this country and they knew if they was to do a crime, the worst that they could happen to them is they get deported. They spend a couple of days in jail, but then when their trial's over, they get deported back to their country. And a lot of motherfuckers knew that. So they was coming up here doing all types of fucking ridiculous crimes, knowing that they was going to get away with it. And I believe that a lot of the violence, a lot of the problems started when a lot of the immigrants came to America and they started bringing those behaviors from their country here to America. And that's just my opinion. I'm not knocking any country, but what I am saying is facts. You know, one thing on this platform we got to understand is that we're going to talk a lot of logic, common sense, and a lot of facts. And the real shit is that when the immigrants started coming to this country, a lot of violence started to rise. I don't have nothing against immigrants, but I'm just saying.
The poverty rate has remained unchanged, but the relationship between poor men and women has changed dramatically. That's because our generous welfare system allows women, in effect, to marry the government.
And that's one of the biggest problems. A lot of the real shit, when our mothers, our grandmothers, and our aunts, the females, period, started marrying the government due to welfare over the father, that's where we went wrong. We started destroying the Black homes, the Black community, and our Black kids because we started, I'm not going to say the females started using this as a crutch. Nigga, I don't need you. Nigga, get the fuck out of my house. Fuck you. I don't need no man. And look what we got now in 2024. You know, by marrying the government, we accepted welfare. We accepted food stamps. We accepted assisted living. We accepted all these benefits from the government that we don't realize is crippling us. It's not helping us grow. It's crippling us. It's not even helping us so we can get to a good part of our lives. It's crippling us. And a lot of it is us as an individual, where we get too comfortable where, let me stop saying we, because men can't get these welfare options. These are given only to the females. And at the end of the day, we want to take the government's handout over a man, and a lot of females will say, oh, men ain't shit, men did it. Well, you picking these men. You decide to lay and open your legs and let this man ski all up in you. So at the end of the day, you only could blame yourself. I'm not saying men are not responsible, because they need to hold responsible as well. But what I am saying is that we got to choose females. We got to choose wisely on the men we pick to have sex with and have a baby with. But once we realized that the government was going to help us, one of the stipulations from the government was that in order for you to get these benefits, the men cannot be in the house. You catch me? And that was always a bad thing, especially if you didn't have a plan to get out of it. That was always a bad thing. And now look at us today. We got a lot of kids that that got more trauma on top of trauma because their mom accepted these programs, kicked the fathers out of the house, was doing loose booty shit or abusing alcohol or drugs. I'm not saying there wasn't no positive moms who was really trying to do things and couldn't get above water, but that's what that system was all about. It was to keep you just enough above water. It was to keep you not to swim, not to get on shore and prosper and build. It was to keep you in the water without floating. And we got sucked into this program where now we done helped the government push the men out of the house. And sometimes we got to use our common sense to realize this is the type of war that they're pulling on us. They're pulling a war of, listen, if we remove the men out of the home, the females and the kids can't fight us, just like in slavery. If we get rid of the men, keep them out in the cotton field, bust their balls, rape them, shoot them, hang them in front of their community and show them how weak they are, and keep removing the men, we could go in there and rape the woman. We could go in there and control the women and the sons and the kids and the daughters. You catch me? And it kind of sucks to go that far back, but real is real, and I'm going to keep it 1,000. Wow. This welfare system that we inherited, we need to get rid of that shit. I don't give a fuck how hard it is, because it has destroyed and broken up the black homes.
And this makes it all too easy for men to abandon their traditional moral and financial responsibilities. Psychologists call such dependency learned helplessness. How do we know that the welfare state creates disincentives that hurt the very people we're trying to help? They tell us. In 1985, the Los Angeles Times asked both the poor and the non-poor whether poor women often have children to get additional benefits. Most of the non-poor respondents said no. However, 64% of poor respondents said yes. Now, who do you think is in a better position to know? Tupac Shakur, the late rapper, once said, "I know for a fact that had I had a father, I'd have some discipline, I'd have more confidence." He had
real shit. And that quote is some real shit for your ass. If we did have our fathers in our home, now again, I'm not saying fathers are perfect, but if we had a father figure in the home, we'll have more discipline and we'll have more confidence. A lot of females will say, oh, I discipline my children, or I'm a better parent than a father. What I realized growing up, just because you have a house, you provide food and clothes doesn't make you a good parent. A lot of the times, a woman can't tell a grown man, a teenager, what to do, especially if she hasn't been training him since a little boy. From my children's mother to my aunt's kids and all of them that had boys, I realized even with their daughters, I realized when they say things, they don't keep their foot on the gas. They may punish them, and then 5 minutes later, they're consoling them, oh, mama, baby, and then the kid forgets about the punishment, and then they go back to doing what they were doing, and the mom don't check them and put them back in that place. Unlike a dad who has the father figure, the stance to say, yo, no, you're in trouble, and this is what it is until your due date is over, or you're on punishment until your due date's over. You know what I mean? You notice with a lot of fathers that are in the house, the ones who are raising their kids, they don't get a lot of back talk. They don't get mouth off from their kids. The mother does, because the child grows up confused. The mom wants to punish them, but at the same time, she doesn't stay firm. She doesn't keep her foot on the gas when it comes to that punishment. The mom doesn't know how to get the male's attention to sit down and listen to him. For an example, one of the reasons my older brother started acting out was not only because his father left, but my mother and his father wasn't really taking the time out to raise him, to give him that knowledge, wisdom, and show him the love that he need. So when old boy bounced, when his father bounced, my brother started running to the streets. He started hanging with the knuckleheads and started using drugs. And with that, he was eating food out the house. He was eating crazy food, wasting food. It came to a point where he started stealing from the family. Well, my mom would get frustrated because she couldn't get through to him. She didn't know how to communicate with him. She didn't know how to make him understand. She'll tell him one thing, he say okay, and then guess what? Bam, he goes out and do it again, because he didn't have the respect as a father figure from his mom. He knew that his mom couldn't really do shit. She couldn't spank him. Now he's big enough that a spanking is not hurting him. And what she'd do is go get our uncle to go talk to him. Well, that shit didn't work because he didn't know how to communicate to my brother either. And when you've been growing up for so long throughout your life, and now you're 14, 15 years old, and now adults are trying to lecture you or punish you or raise you or put you in your place, it's a little too fucking late. So the only thing my mom could do to get the best out of it, let me rephrase that. The only thing my mom could do was kick him out of the house. Every time she couldn't get through my brother's head, every time she couldn't control him, every time he wouldn't listen, it's get the fuck out of my house. And seeing that not only hurt me, because, real shit, I was little at the time. I'm like 9 years old. And I'm like, where the fuck my brother's going to go? Like I said, our neighborhood was infested with crime. So I was always afraid, you know what I mean? Like, we hear ambulance every fucking day. It was like so normal to hear the ambulance and police sirens that if you didn't hear it, it was kind of eerie. But I was always afraid that something bad would happen to my brother. It came to the point where in our neighborhood, we would watch the news just to make sure nobody we loved or in our family or we knew got killed or got murdered or got into a crime that night. That's how it was in the city. That's how bad it was. So when she used to kick him out, it used to fuck with me a lot. But the moral to the story is that she didn't know how to get through to him. She couldn't control him. She didn't know how to talk to him to make him understand where she was coming from, for him to listen, for him to stay out of the streets. And that's because she didn't have that male figure in the household to talk to him. I'm all thinking deep now because now it's bringing me back down memory lane. But let's go back into this joint.
Admitted he began running with gangs because he wanted the things a father gives to a child, especially to a boy.
Real shit.
Structure and protection.
Exactly.
Your mother cannot calm you down the way a man can, Shakur said.
Exactly.
You need a man to teach you how to be a man. In my book, Dear Father, Dear Son, I write.
And we're going to stop it right there. But that's some real shit for your ass. And I'm going to say, again, this platform is to promote the fathers that are there for their children, and to pretty much all the fathers that's not there for their children. We need to start doing better before we have kids. Those who have kids that's not involved, we got to do better. Our kids are suffering and going through a lot, man. And it kind of sucks that we don't even know or feel the pain that they're going through. Sometimes we need to show up, and not sometimes we need to show up all the time, but sometimes we need to realize that, if I'm not going to be there for my child, if I don't really want to have a child with this lady, let me strap up. Let me protect myself. Let me make sure I don't practice your pull-out game, man. Do something, because it's not fair to these kids who are not asked to be here to come into this world, and then you want to abandon them for whatever personal fucking reason. So we're going to stop right there. We're going to tap out. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe so I could draw more inspiration to make more videos. Support this content into the next episode.